Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm in San Diego. I've got Sam Tanios with me today from Human Elements. He's in Chicago. I am the founder and CEO of Civility Partners. We're a company focused on building positive, thriving work environments, and we often end up being called in to turn around toxic work environments and turn around ugly behavior. So I'm excited to have you here with me today, Sam. Nice to see you.
Very nice to see you. Very excited to be here.
Awesome. So right before we went live, I'm going to ask you to repeat your answer that you were sharing with me. You are a serial entrepreneur. You've had many businesses along the way, and they all involved humans, I'm sure. So I just wanted to start there. Tell us a little bit about all of the businesses you've had along the way.
Sure. Well, I'm going to exclude all of the lemonade stands and various other things I did prior to my adolescence. But in college, I created a fund to invest in real estate tax liens. I was involved in creating and taking to market the very first exclusively online golf retailer back in the 90s when Netscape first appeared on the scene. I was involved in a startup telecom for a bit of time. Also involved in a PEO, founder and vice president of that organization. And finally, the last one so far has been Human Elements. So.
Wow, that's so interesting. I always think when I started a business in college, and it wasn't, if I were going to start a business in college, it probably would not have been something as cool and intricate as buying tax liens. But anyway, tell us so along the way, I assume you have learned a lot about the importance of humans as assets, which is all over your website. So I'd love to hear about that and some of what you've learned along the way, as well as I'm assuming all of those other businesses have led you up to your new venture now, really focused on humans as assets. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, so I think it really kind of goes back to well, if I look throughout my entire career, I've really looked at people as interesting components of organizations, and it really kind of dawned on me. My last stint in corporate America in management consulting, I was working with several Fortune 100 companies. And one of the things that I really kind of noticed in their approach to people, and I've always been in the people industry, one of the things that I noticed was that the way that they refer to their former employees, they don't call them ex anything. They call them alumni. And and I thought, well, why do you do that? What's the rationale behind that? And the rationale was is if they stayed connected to them in some way, whether they wanted to stay in the organization and move up, or they wanted to move on with their career and go somewhere else, we wanted to help them. We wanted to be able to develop them and create stewards and ambassadors of the organization, whether they were part of our organization or not. And the rationale for it was, and I thought, well, that's I thought initially, well, that's a very touchy-feely HR kind of thing. I have a finance background. I'm like, well, where's the ROI in that? And they told me that they drove nearly $500 million in revenue the prior year from alumni referrals. And I thought, that is a nice ROI. So yeah, so I started to really investigate, what does this really mean? And we talked a lot about employee engagement back then. It was kind of very early on in the idea of employee engagement. And some of the statistics that I started to see that came out of really highly engaged employees within an organization were really astounding. And my concept for Human Elements was to take that initiative, take those same concepts and distill them down for organizations that were smaller. I felt that if we're going to make an impact for small businesses, which was really my passion is in the small business space.
Mhm.
How are we going to do that? And I thought, the final frontier of all the things that we can do. I mean, other than if we invent another internet kind of thing uh,
Mhm.
that revolutionizes how we work or how we do business. Uh, People was really that kind of unknown that most organizations just didn't know what to do with. You'd hire employees and you'd think, oh, well, you should be grateful for having a job,
Right.
and I'm just going to give you what I'm required to give you, and that's about it. Or I might give you more benefits because I want to keep you, or things of that nature. And
Mhm.
what I really started to discover was the value to these organizations of having more than just a workforce, more than just people doing work, but people that are enormously engaged in the purpose, the vision, the mission, the values of the
Mhm.
organization. And
Mhm.
we see this now, especially now, that it's so important to attract the right type of talent to your organization is to understand what you're all about and what your purpose is, because people connect to a purpose. They don't
Right.
connect to a paycheck.
Right. They connect to a purpose and then they connect to the people that they're partnered up with inside their teams to reach that purpose or achieve their vision and mission. So yeah, having an important, or it's very important to have a group that feels safe and comfortable and happy. And that's amazing that case study, they had earned 500,000 in revenue from alumni referrals. You always hear about employer branding around attracting and retaining talent. That's a whole nother level of also having them refer people to us after they leave. So that's amazing. So talk to me more about small businesses.
Mhm.
Um, why focus there? Why now versus focusing on the Chevrons or Fortune 500s of the world?
One of the things that the most practical reason is that those organizations have resources to be able to do what they do, and
Mhm.
quite honestly, I come from an immigrant family, and one of the things that we had to do was we had to start our own business. We had to do things for ourselves in order to be able to succeed.
Mhm.
My parents both had tremendous work ethic. My father held 4 jobs at one time, my mother 2 at the same time. So 6 jobs between them. Uh,
Wow.
as when I was a child, that really kind of set my work ethic at that point. And in addition to those jobs, my father invested in starting his own business in the real estate industry. So. Um, I knew what it took to get a small business off the ground. I knew the sacrifices that small business owners had to make in order to
Mhm.
get their businesses off the ground. Uh,
Mhm.
the risks that they took with their livelihood, their family's livelihood, in order to get you a cup of coffee in the morning, or a bagel, or scrambled eggs, or what have you. Uh,
Mhm.
to get your clothes clean, to get your car washed, to put gas in your car, to do all of the things that small businesses do for us.
Mhm.
It takes a tremendous amount of effort to be able to launch it, to run it, and to help it succeed.
Mhm.
I think and I've always had the attitude of small businesses were really the lifeblood of the country, really. And I
Mhm.
think statistically, we knew that 99 point whatever it was 5% of all of the businesses in the U.S. employ less than 100 employees, and that any employer that has less than 500 employees is classified as a small business, or
Mhm.
small employer. Um, and of all of those businesses, we collectively, as small business owners, employ over 55% of the workforce.
Mhm.
So this is an important community
Mhm.
to this country, and we saw how important it was when we were experiencing lockdowns, and many of these businesses were shutting down.
Yeah.
And I live in Lincoln Park in Chicago, and all of our major streets in the community, are lined with small businesses, and when they were shuttered, you really felt the community just shut down.
Yeah.
It was really dead,
Hmm.
and it was disheartening, and it was frightening, quite honestly, to see all of that. And fortunately, we're starting to make a bit of a comeback here, I think. But to me, that was the exclamation point on on the point that small businesses were vital to the economy, to us as a people. To again, we talk about act local, think global, whatever that phrase is. It really kind of resonated with me in terms of these smaller businesses, and since then I have gone out of my way to do all of my shopping, all of my purchasing from small businesses, because even though I might pay a little bit more,
Hmm.
I know what it supports, and I know what's behind it. To go to Target versus the mom and pop down the street to buy
Socks,
well,
whatever.
whatever.
Wine, dishes,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
name it.
Yes, you name it. I know Target doesn't need my business,
Hmm.
but these people down the street do. And that that my dollars are making a contribution, and we talk about do our dollars make any does our vote count? Well,
Right.
it does, because we vote with our dollars, and we vote with what's important to us, and what's important to us is the communities that we live in, uh,
Hmm.
and the ability to be able to support people in those communities. So that's really why small businesses are so important to me.
Yeah.
And I just think, again, we don't do a good job of supporting them,
No.
either shoppers or, certainly, don't get me started on legislation and things of
Oh
that
God.
nature. But
Yeah.
that's not,
That's another podcast, not
right,
this.
right, yeah, yeah.
What,
So
so tell me who your clients are. Are these business owners who recognize, gosh, I need to get my human situation in order, the humans who work here, I want to treat them with dignity and they're super important? Or is it more where you're sort of having to convince them that, hey, there's a kind of an ROI on treating humans well, like humans?
yeah, yeah, no, great question. A little bit of everything.
Okay.
I think when somebody comes to me and and says they have an HR need, my
Hmm.
first question is, why do you think you have an HR need?
Hmm.
It's generally because someone told them that they needed an employee handbook or something of that nature. Uh,
Hmm.
but really, when I dig a little bit deeper, they always fall into the same patterns that I've kind of created a little story around it, called the evolution of HR in a small business. And if you'll permit me a minute or two to share that, the way that it typically starts is a business owner or owners, they get together, they start a business because they think they can do something bigger, better, faster than anybody else.
Hmm.
And if they're right, which many of them are, they can and they do, and they start to do well. They start to sell their product or service, and things are going along very, very, very nicely. But then they realize that they need to hire somebody to help them because they can't do everything themselves.
Hmm.
And so they hire somebody, and generally, what comes with hiring an employee is you have to pay them.
Hmm.
The government is very strict on that, and I don't
Yeah.
blame them. Uh, so you generally hire a payroll service of some kind to pay them.
Hmm.
And as they grow and add more and more employees, the initial thrill of, hey, if I enter this number into this website here, I actually can create a paycheck or a direct deposit for an employee. That's pretty cool.
Hmm.
That goes away very quickly. That cool factor of doing that, because now it becomes every week or every other week I've got to do this. I've got so many other things to do. I'm
Hmm.
going to assign this to one of my employees to do.
Hmm.
And generally, what happens with that is whoever is responsible and in charge of entering payroll becomes the de facto HR person.
Right.
So That responsibility then is laid on this person who's typically not trained in it and is
Mm-hmm.
responsible for now learning it. And
Mm-hmm.
the first place that most people go to learn something, Google or now Chat GPT. So
Mm-hmm.
now you're, getting information from, loads of places that likely do not relate to your organization because it doesn't take into account your geography,
Right.
your industry, your size, et cetera. A lot of factors that are generally not taken into consideration. So you
Yeah.
start to do things that you think might be effective, but really what you're doing is creating a time bomb.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that time bomb will go off. It
Mm-hmm.
always does. And it's generally expensive. It's always
Mm-hmm.
expensive.
Yes.
It's,
Take it from me. It's
yes,
expensive. It's a lot
I've seen
cheaper to fix it early.
I've seen it many, 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 many times. It can also be reputationally
Mm-hmm.
damaging, and in some cases, it can be catastrophic for the
Mm-hmm.
organization and
Mm-hmm.
even for the business owner personally. So, we wanted to avoid all of that, and so, our approach was we needed to be holistic, comprehensive, and proactive with these businesses. So when we talk to organizations, about we think we need an employee handbook, and I ask why. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Generally, there's a deeper issue there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's an area that that most small businesses do not invest in,
Mm-hmm.
but it is their biggest asset.
Mm-hmm.
You really look at it, it's their biggest expense. Certainly, it's their biggest liability, and if you consider it a liability, then
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to invest in a liability. But if
Right.
you consider it an asset, a
Mm-hmm.
way of being able to differentiate yourself from your competitors,
Mm-hmm.
then you are willing to invest in it. And it's really, what our job is to really change the paradigm of how small businesses view their employees. And if we can do that effectively, and help these businesses understand what kind of value these employees are able to provide to them,
Mm-hmm.
role of the HR person becomes as invaluable to them as the role of a CFO or a controller. In fact, I might even argue that that role is more important than that of a CFO or a controller, because again, you're dealing with the most important asset you have.
Yeah, yeah. And I talk about that same thing around HR professionals, that if your CEO sees you as essentially not a liability, but just a cost center, HR is where the payroll lies, where the benefits lie. This person themselves as the HR professional is a cost. If the HR person's buying into that, then that's unfortunate for the business. It's unfortunate for that HR professional on a professional level, because they're never going to get higher than where they're at, versus the CEOs who see HR as very important. They're not a cost center. The HR professional or the department is an investment, because they're investing, and guiding the company into investing into their employees. And so as HR professionals, being careful of how you're being pinned from the CEO, and how does the CEO see you. And I just see, I'm selling to HR in my world, and just can see that a lot, where there's a stark contrast in those two types of HR professionals and how they're treated. And it's somewhat mind-boggling if you think about it, because I think about my P&L. Certainly payroll is my biggest expense, and I would imagine, as you said, it's many other companies' biggest expense, but it's still not treated very well. And it's amazing that I even have a job, I feel like sometimes. Serena has asked a question. At what point do you stop considering a business a small business? So Sam, you had said 500 is kind of the number. Do you have that's the number that maybe tax purposes and all of that, but is there another number that you would use just kind of instinctually?
I'd say that in a business that has probably 100 employees or less would be, I would still consider to be a small business. At 100 employees, there's a level of sophistication that an employer of 5 employees is not, or 10 employees, or even 20 employees is not going to have when you've got an organization that has 100 employees, because at that point you are subject to virtually every single act and every single
Regulation and law and all that. Yeah.
regulation that any business would be susceptible to. So I'd say once you hit that level, you are no longer a small business, and the excuse of, oh, I didn't know, it doesn't fly well with the Department of Labor or any other governing body now anyway.
Yep.
But yeah, certainly it's even less so. Again, you don't want to be considered a negligent employer, but yeah, I'd say probably around 100 employees is likely where you'd see yourself as more than just a small business.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the services. So as a small business reaching out to you, what does that work look like from you?
So we actually just launched a program that we call HR1, which really incorporates a lot of almost actually everything that we do. There is a technology component to it. There is a people component to it. There is a process component to it. And when we combine all of that together, we developed it with the intention of being the most holistic, the most comprehensive, and the most proactive HR solution for small business.
Awesome.
So, and the reason why is that we take a look at the organization from the entire employee life cycle. And I think that's probably one of the most important aspects to really being to being stewards of the employees, or really being asset managers, because you've got to really look at before these employees become employees at that candidate stage, all the way to the stage when they exit the organization. So it's that hire to retire kind of life cycle. And there's technology there to be able to automate a lot of that, and we have technology to be able to do that. Payroll is kind of the hub of that, because there's so much information and data that comes into the payroll system that it becomes really an information hub for everything that happens in the organization. So we needed to be able to access that and be able to run our own reports and diagnostics and analytics around that. So we have a system to be able to automate that entire employee life cycle. The other aspect to that is that these systems are wonderful, but you have to know what you're doing with them to set them up appropriately. And generally, when a lot of our competitors, and we've had situations where we've taken on clients that have from competitors that have set them up with all of this stuff, just don't know how to use it, and it's not really set up appropriately for them, so they wind up not using it. So our when we combine our technology with our advisory services, our fractional chief people officers, or CPOs, those individuals have the ability to be able to evaluate where the organization is currently, allow us the ability to be able to set up the system appropriately with the appropriate automations, but more importantly, because we are looking at the entire employee life cycle, it's understanding what processes need to be installed and how they need to be set up to begin with in order to accommodate the organization.
Yeah.
So it's great to have a recruiting process, but and automate it, but you need to be able to figure out what works for your organization, and who's going to be doing the interviewing, and who's going to be evaluating these candidates, and who's going to be hiring them. So all of those things kind of need to be addressed. The last piece of that is a proprietary process that we developed to ensure that every aspect of the employee life cycle we have audited and evaluated for compliance, administration, operations, and strategy, so that we can ensure that that we have created that roadmap for the organization, and that we can address the current challenges and issues, but also really look to the future to see what challenges are out there that the organization could potentially run into, and what kind of opportunities are out there that the organization could take advantage of. So when we talk about being as comprehensive and proactive and holistic, we feel that we've kind of hit hit a really home run with the service. So that's really kind of our bread and butter, so to speak. That's our growth model right now, is the HR One platform. We have the ability to be able to break up some of those things as well. I mean, obviously, it's very, very small clients might just need us to payroll them and help them with some HR basics, and we're happy to do that.
Right.
And we do have larger clients that have more comprehensive issues that, again, outside of the technology and the automation, there may be issues with connecting performance management with compensation, and they may need some expertise around that. And we have team members that have a lot of compensation expertise as well. So we like to engage the client where they are. And certainly we have our share of clients in many different industries. The particular favorite industry of ours happens to be the cannabis industry.
Okay.
We have the capability.
I'm in California. That's not a shocker for.
Well, we have the ability to be able to payroll the cannabis industry, and anybody that knows the woes of the cannabis industry, banking is a big problem, and we've have a resolution for that, and the ability to be able to work with them in that capacity. And what we found also, which is exciting for me especially, is that these are small business owners that want to be known as small business owners, or owners of businesses that are in the cannabis industry, not owners of cannabis businesses.
Right.
So there's that desire to be really recognized for the value that they bring to their community and to their customers as well.
Yeah, I love that. Just side note, totally unrelated, but I'm in a professional networking group called Provisors, which if you're not in it, Sam, you should definitely be. But I remember 6 years ago when I started, there was kind of the joke of, oh, cannabis, don't touch that, and all these kind of, white collar professionals. And now we have, our affinity groups for lawyers or HR, whatever, and there's several cannabis affinity groups, and they often have speakers talking about just what you're saying, that it's actually cheaper to run a cannabis shop illegally and have it shut down than to go through. So there's a whole lot of equity and inclusion stuff in that realm. So it's a very fascinating industry to keep your eye on if anybody's listening and is not keeping their eye on it. So anyway, thank you, Sam, for joining me today. This was really fascinating. And I don't know too many human resources consulting companies that really can provide that full spectrum of service for a small business. Small businesses end up piecing things together, and that's not a way to be efficient and grow. So thank you for all you're doing on behalf of small businesses everywhere.
Thank you,
Tell us where we can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so you can email me at samt@humanelements.us. I always like phone calls as well, and my phone number is 773-251-6776, and I promise you that is my direct line.
Wow, that was bold.
Well, hopefully my phone doesn't go berserk here shortly, but hopefully it will. But
hopefully it does, yeah.
And then of course you can find me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to connect with folks. And again, one of the things that I really enjoy doing is helping small businesses in any capacity that I can. I welcome questions. I welcome the opportunity to provide guidance where I can. So I would encourage anybody that has a small business that just wants a couple of questions answered. I'm always happy to help.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next time.